Well, there we go.
Okay, welcome everyone to tonight's workshop. We'll be going through job application materials, and this will be a more freeform workshop than the presentations we've had in the past. Ace and I are both technical writers at Crunchyroll, and we've prepared short blurbs about different aspects of the job search process that we'll show you on a board we have prepared. And how we intend to move through this is basically whatever is useful to the group. I know in light of the market moment right now, things are very chaotic, and to say the least. And we're either personally looking for work for some of us or know folks who are. Personally, in Ace in my network, a lot of our colleagues were recently laid off and have been reaching out for help and support. So hopefully this workshop is helpful to you in some ways. And at the end of it, we will consolidate the resources that we discuss here and send them out. So you can use these to help those you know, help yourself, basically just prepare yourself for whatever you need at this time. So without more ado, I'll share my screen and we'll jump right in. So, oh, looks like participant sharing is disabled. If we could unlock that. There we go. Thank you. All right. Does everyone see a little let's get prepped board?
Yep.
Hopefully. Great.
I see it.
So these are some of the topics that we have prepared little blurbs about. Honestly, at this point, I am curious to see, what is everyone interested in? Do you have places you'd like to start? Anything of that nature, whatever's helpful.
I say I've noticed a lot of these things on LinkedIn are automated, and they kind of encourage you to do a cover letter,
Mm-hmm.
which is new. I think I don't think people did cover letters very much in the past, and it kind of let you stand out to have a good cover letter. But now that no, I don't know if they're becoming pro forma. I'd like to hear what you have to say about them. And
Yeah,
Absolutely.
let's do it.
So cover letters are something that I've had a professor in college that really influenced my entire career. I started off as a pre-med major, ended up in his class that was about introduction to digital literacies. And part of that was learning how to write for the web and how to write in a technical space. And something that he had introduced me to was a very special blog post by another professor named Clay Spinuzzi. And essentially what that blog post talks about is how to actually approach a cover letter. And this link will be shared out afterwards, but overall, what you want to do with your cover letter is you can start off with a basic template. You know, everybody usually does that, but you also want to connect the job listing, whatever pertinent information that especially applies to your resume, and connect those dots. So that's, you know, if your resume is something that is personal to you, and the job listing is personal, is tailored to that company's role that's open, the cover letter is really what connects you to that role. And so, Jasmine, if you actually click that second little page, it should zoom right in. You could even just zoom in manually. So this is a recent cover letter that I had written for Crunchyroll, and I can also share the job listing if I can find it afterwards. But a lot of times I would use this basic template, you know, starting with Dear Hiring Professional. You know, I make sure I call out the company itself. So I never write like a generic cover letter. I make sure that it's actually like tailored to that specific company and that specific role that it calls out. You know, I want to call out the different, you know, whatever keywords that I noticed in the job listing. So like in the first paragraph, I talk about, you know, technical documentation and microcopy for software products, and that directly applied to this roles listing. and just kind of finding those commonalities between your experiences and your resume, and tying it to the job listing. And I find that a lot of times, like, most people don't apply, if it's not a required field in a job application, most people do not apply with a cover letter, because, you got to save time, right? You don't want to take time, write the cover letter, and then get a rejection instantly. But being on the other side of being part of interview panels and seeing exactly what people do and don't submit, you will stand out when you do write a cover letter. And once you come up with your specific pattern and template, it kind of becomes second nature for how you want to position yourself to a specific job listing. So
Is there
there's
a trade-off in like between communicating that information and dealing with people's short attention spans? Like, I see this as a whole page, and I wonder, is that really is that a disadvantage or an advantage?
So I guess in when it's paired with the resume. So I guess, Jasmine, if you can zoom out a little bit, and I can talk a little bit about the resume, so I can kind of tie it into that question. So when I think about what a resume should be, in that little top right corner, I just redacted my personal info. I have very specific requirements for myself when it comes to a resume. Like, I don't ever want to keep it over a single page if possible. And I'm tailoring it to the specific job listing and industry. So, like, if I've worked in lawn care and things like that, like, I'm not necessarily gonna include that in my resume just because I've done it. Like, LinkedIn is another form of your online resume, and there's really no limit to how much you can add to that profile. But your resume is really going to be the thing that is, like, there's going to be a short attention span. You want to catch people's eyes quickly so that they can quickly scan through the resume. And you want to make sure you provide it in a PDF format. I've seen many resumes in like a doc format, from Microsoft Word, that just gets completely blown up if it's not, the formatting gets messed up, and it's not exactly the thing they intend to provide as their, as a representation of how they would design a document. And also, you can take that same strategy for, like, relating your resume to a specific job. So, like, if somebody calls out something, like, instead of calling it microcopy, they'll call it UX writing. Those are the same things in most cases. So, like, replacing some keywords or just adding keywords if necessary. So the resume is the first thing that people will see. I think the cover letter is the thing that'll make you stand out once you got their attention with the resume that you provided. So yeah, I wouldn't write more than a single page for the cover letter. Much like the resume, I would keep both to a single page. Keep it scannable. Like, make sure that you're using more like block paragraphs instead of ragged left paragraphs, just so that it's easier to scan. And again, it's all about matching keywords and whatever those specific components that are listed to that company's job listing. But yeah, usually the cover letter will be more relevant when you get closer, like, to the hiring manager stage, and that'll be just another thing that'll differentiate you from the other resumes in the pile.
Well, okay, I see that. I like the way you laid out your resume. I mean, I like the fact that there's so much white space and bullets and things, and it's easy to navigate. And it seems to me you could do the same with a cover letter or something similar with a cover letter. More bullets and things, for example, shorter paragraphs, more white space.
Absolutely, I really like that idea, Richard. And just to call out, so another thing I wanted to mention about the resumes, this is a template that I actually use on Google Docs. So are folks using Google Docs to make things like resumes or anything like that? Or is it mostly like in Microsoft Words? I'm less familiar with those templates, but this is, so Jasmine, if you, are you able to go to the Google Docs homepage?
Should be able to just,
Yeah, because it's going to be
yeah.
one of the first templates that pop up, just so I can call it out.
Okay, like through my own.
Yeah,
Is
just
that what you're saying?
docs.google.com.
Got okay. Thanks. It's been a long day.
Well, I'll show you the exact template I use. So it should be, I guess if you go to the template gallery on the upper right, it should open up. So go to General, it's the second tab. So I would scroll down a little bit, and maybe this is because it's on the Crunchyroll.
It was a
There we
search
go.
box on the.
Oh, there it is, right there. That second one,
This
resume.
one?
So that's the very one that I use, and I'll like edit it a little bit. So everything is pretty much laid out the same way. The nice thing about the Google Docs approach is that you can open it up from different devices. You don't have to worry about saving it to a thumb drive or anything. I know there are some cloud solutions for Microsoft Word, but I've always been happy to update my resume from, if I have to do it. If I'm applying for jobs on my phone, even I can update, make a version of my resume for a specific job listing. But this is my favorite way of kind of keeping kind of a more live document for my resume. In the past, I'd created a resume through InDesign because I wanted to show off my document design skills, and that became a nightmare to actually update and maintain. So I would say, find a template that speaks to you in a way that, you're comfortable with that being kind of your professional representation of who you are just on a white piece of paper. So I would save. We'll share this specific resume after the
Yeah.
actual workshop, but this one's my favorite one.
So I know a lot of these hiring processes use automation in a way that requires certain formats for your input. They want you to submit a Microsoft Word format or a PDF or something so that they can process it with their primitive processing tools.
Absolutely. And I think some of the worst is when you have to re-enter the same information into different fields on a specific job board. But I always typically, even when you do that, you're still able to attach whatever PDF you want to attach, just for just so you can still say like, hey, this is who I am. This is how I present myself in this format, so that again you could still show that you're putting in the thought and effort and like the document design, because especially as a technical writer, I think that even your resume is a work sample, and that's really what how I view it. But yeah, absolutely. I think another reason I would recommend the template approach, especially from Google Docs, is that it's going to be more friendly towards like web-based resume submissions. Because Google Docs is web-based, it's going to just not, you're not going to have an issue with weird formatting from like maybe an old doc file, Word file or something like that. So yeah, I've had better experience just submitting through a common template than just through creating my own formatting. So
Yeah. And I think to kind of pivot a tiny bit back to cover letters too, I think the way we're talking about formatting and all of this is great. One piece of advice that I heard recently from a colleague is save your cover letter and your resume in a single file, because often if they're not required for your cover, like if a cover letter is not required, they'll just get dropped off by the recruiters. And I've seen that happen several times at companies I've been on searches for, and it's very frustrating. So weigh your options as to how closely you think the hiring panel cares about the fact that they're asking just for a resume, but bundling those can help you as well.
So Ace, when you send the cover letter, do you actually send it? Do you like send a PDF of it, or do you actually just send a link to the Google Doc?
Oh, so yeah, I will export both of these files as PDFs. And yeah, I found that PDF is pretty commonly like supported as one of those submission formats. So yeah, PDF, PDF, PDF. That's I've seen too many Comic Sans like fonts because they'll use some fancy, also use a basic font, keep it Arial. If you like, Times New Roman, keep it that. I've seen if it's not something that's like commonly supported, maybe through like a custom font that maybe somebody downloads, or one of the fancier fonts, just through Google Fonts. One of the fallback fonts could be Comic Sans or something that you really don't want. So yeah, you want to keep the PDF will keep your fancy font if you like that. But I would just recommend more of your basic fonts that you've seen everywhere else if possible. So
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Could I quickly chime in from a recruiter's perspective, someone who speaks to hiring managers
Absolutely.
directly without without filters? I think including a cover letter is a good idea if you think the job description was written thoughtfully. There are an awful lot of canned job descriptions. They don't deserve a cover letter because they are just out of some template and they haven't thought carefully about what they want. And if you commit yourself to saying, here's how I can help you in your cover note, you're probably off target because they don't know what their target is. So from a hiring manager's perspective, I deduce a couple things from a cover note. The fact that it actually exists. You read the job description and you understand the responsibilities. That's key. A lot of people don't. They just hit reply. You've actually thought about how your skills and your interests sync with the hiring manager's needs. You won't waste my time if I want to speak with you and ask you questions and have you actually give thoughtful answers. And last, you probably won't ghost me if I commit to hiring and onboarding you, because you've made the effort to think through how you fit with the job. That used to be, the ghosting part used to be a big problem. It isn't as much anymore. But it actually says a lot about the candidate's integrity. If they say, okay, you've written a thoughtful job description, get it, here's my thoughtful response. That makes you look better. But I can tell you, you would be wasting your time with many job descriptions you'll see out there, which are contradictory and also canned and done by somebody who's just harvesting resumes.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thanks so much. That's a really good perspective because, we only ever see it from our side. So just seeing like, oh, they can get lazy on their
Stick
end.
around, you will actually see it from their side when you become a hiring manager.
And Andrew, do you have, oh, sorry. Andrew, do you have any specific things to look for a canned response? I mean, sometimes they're very obvious, but any red flags that you would call out?
I mean, the obvious ones are using silly, outdated tools, Word, FrameMaker. Those just scream, I haven't got a clue. If they won't tell you about their product, if they won't tell you what you are going to be doing and what you can evolve into doing. And essentially, if they say, just check the boxes so that we don't have to think about doc anymore, that's a loud red flag, very, very large red flag, a loud danger sign. I would recommend steering away from those. I think you get a sixth sense reading enough job descriptions. This is done by a recruiter who's been told, find a tech writer who can do, who can do what we've got. Sometimes a job description will point you to their existing content. That's helpful. Sometimes they will just say, build us something from scratch. That's not helpful. because they really haven't led you to believe, they haven't led you to understand what they want, what strategy they're following, what their values are, what tools they plan to use.
Awesome. Thank you so much. A lot of great insight.
I notice Saba has his hand up.
Yeah, no, I just had a quick question for Andrew and maybe the speakers. Is that what is the percentage do you see, or is there, how often is it a canned job description, and how often is it? What's the state of the market right now? Do you know?
I'm going to plead the fifth because I don't read too many job descriptions. Typically, I see ones that candidates who want my advice share with me, and I can flag it in a 10-second read. Like, these people haven't thought about it. I've seen this job description 100 times before with maybe a couple word variants. It's gratuitous, it's vapid, it's a harvesting gesture. This is, they think tech writers are tech writers. And you have to work hard not to feel insulted by most of the job descriptions in that category. But if you've got somebody, an experienced TechPubs person, writing a job description saying, this is what I'm looking for and this is what I'm not looking for, then they've thought about it. Often, if they don't ever list a contact these days, but if it sounds like it came from HR or an internal recruiter, I can more or less guarantee that that's a committee hack job. not to be too impolite about it, but there are conflicting priorities, and you're not going to win. The only way to win those is to come back to them 3 months later when they haven't found the right person and say, this is what I can do for you. And you have to come back to them individually. You have to come back to them in their email box, not in their resume database. And that's hard to do. So, I mean, the business I get these days, when there are people who want help, it's because they've written self-contradictory job descriptions. Yeah, yes, we want a computer science major who writes Shakespeare in English and does it for 30K. I'll say, okay, so you have some conflicts here with your priorities. How do you plan to solve them? Because I guarantee that for all the technical skills you've listed, you've never met anyone like that. And if you had met someone like that, you couldn't afford someone like that. So what's it going to be? And they are so grateful to hear plain spoken advice that, I mean, if I were a job hunter, I would say, I'm not going to give you X, Y, and Z. I'm going to give you X and Y, and you're going to pay 3Z for it. But you'll be happy. Look at my recommendations. Let's talk.
Yeah, thanks so much, Andrew.
Sure.
Yeah, I
Sorry
think.
to monopolize.
Oh, you're good. This is exactly what we want. Yeah, it's so I usually end up like really focusing on maybe no more than 3 to 5 different job listings at a time. So I get really picky because, yeah, it is easy to, like, there's a lot of listings, but like, yeah, some things just might smell bad about that list, about the listing. And, those are the things that Andrew mentioned that I didn't even think about, that like why I would automatically filter things out. So I guess to answer your question, Sabat, I'm not sure what that percentage looks like, but it's more than I would like to see. And we'll get into like job, like kind of strategies that we take when we look at different job listings on like, I guess my go-tos here soon. But yeah, that'll be something we'll talk about to help find like the good listings.
Mhm. Okay. Any final thoughts on this topic? Gonna zoom us out. What next? What's interesting to everyone? We were talking about listings. We could move over and talk about job boards, looking at listings. We can always pull up Indeed and make fun of a few listings themselves.
Here's one about job boards. I actually recently went back and logged into my Dice account
Ooh.
and made sure yeah, just something clicked, and I was thinking, do I, because Dice lets you upload a PDF to have it handy, and I wanted to update that. And then suddenly I'm getting calls twice a day from people off Dice. I mean, these are all contract positions, 6 months here, 12 months there, but Dice apparently is alive.
Wow.
And thus my next question, I see you have Glassdoor and Indeed listed.
Yes.
And how does one find jobs on EFA? I'm a member of EFA, but I'm not sure how that works for jobs. And then the STC Job Bank. I'm going to have to Google that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
for it. Nope, you're good.
So some of these this is my order of preference for like how I start to look for jobs. LinkedIn's just been really solid for me recently, and especially if you haven't done the free trial for LinkedIn Premium, like not only do you get you get boosted when you apply to these jobs. Because unfortunately, LinkedIn is pay to play when it comes to job applications. But I think the reason why, to me, LinkedIn is the best job board right now is because you get the visibility of who that recruiter is or who that hiring manager is oftentimes in that job listing. And companies do pay a lot of attention to how they are presented on LinkedIn. So you can kind of suss out the more legitimate job listings and companies. It's not going to be something that's necessarily going to be a scam. I haven't personally applied to sketchy listings, but I have seen fake companies that appear to be real on LinkedIn. This was probably a couple years ago, where my brother had reached out to me about a listing, and I looked at it like, oh, they have a LinkedIn site. And then I took another look and I'm like, oh, this is not really what it seems like. It looks like a real company, but it was a duplicate of another company. And what these people wanted him to do was he took this remote this email interview, which is also just a weird concept to me, which of course, who would do an interview through email typically, right? But it got to the point where they offered him a role on the spot, and I'm like, that seems too good to be true, because it is, because they wanted him to send his his social security number, things like that. And I'm like, watch out, double check if you can even see if this company has any followers. You could see if there's any other job listings, or better yet, go to that company's actual website to see if this is an actual role that's being offered. But yeah, that's just another thing to be wary about, is there could be scams on some of these job boards that are mixed in with even some of the the resume milling posts. So
my son had a interaction just like you described. He's a film editor, and they sent this video editor, and they sent he did an email interview, and or no, it was an online, like a chat interview online. And then they wanted him they were going to provide a workstation for him to edit on, and he was suspicious of that because the workstation that they spec'd wasn't really good enough for the kind of stuff he does. And the whole thing was, it really smelled terrible, and they're taking advantage of people who are looking for work. So and they wanted him to advance money to ship the machine to him. And it's really just awful stuff.
A big no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I know the job market's hard right now, and it's really nice to feel like you're getting a break when you get like a really positive interaction. But yeah, absolutely. If it feels like it's too good to be true, like, take a minute, think about what's going on. You shouldn't have to send money to get something shipped to you. So yeah, just cautionary tales when dealing with any of the job listings, even if it's LinkedIn or Glassdoor or Indeed. So yeah, that was something that I just seen happen to other people, and yeah, it's really sad. So just, if it feels too good to be true, it probably is. But at least with LinkedIn, like I said, start off with that free trial if you haven't. Gosh, it is now, I think, $40 a month, which that they've worked out their budget to where like maybe people spend 2 to 3 months or so on average with premium while they're looking for a job, which is why it's so expensive. I've found that if you stop the free trial when you get close to your month, it'll offer you $20 a month so that it'll retain you. So, if you don't want to pay that $40 and you're still looking for jobs on LinkedIn, like, try to cancel it. They're going to try to retain you. You could save a little bit of money that next month. It's more expensive than Netflix, like, let's be real. Especially now that they've ended what was it, sharing with other family that doesn't live with you, but that's another topic. So, and along with LinkedIn, so I like that you can connect with, oftentimes recruiters will reach out to you. You'll have more visibility among recruiters. Actually, Andrew, do you have insight into this? So does premium help your visibility too on the recruiter side?
No,
Okay.
unless you own a license to LinkedIn Recruiter, which is a separate product exclusively for recruiters and runs maybe $7K per person per year. It doesn't really help your visibility. I don't pay attention to that. I own a premium subscription that lets people connect with me regardless of whether they are premium members. And basically, I put down the drawbridge instead of requiring them to pay up.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for letting me pick on you. I was just so curious.
Oh, recruiting is a despicable profession. It is so low, it's disgusting, and it doesn't take much to stand out. No footnotes to that comment.
Thank you. Yeah. So, another feature I've seen on LinkedIn Premium, and I can't speak to the actual accuracy of the numbers, but it will base it'll consider you like a certain percentage above the competition based on certain factors on your resume. Maybe it's years in industry, maybe it's the keywords that you've added to your LinkedIn profile.
Yep.
So keep that in mind. You'll have just more insight into job listings with LinkedIn Premium. And my goodness, I am not getting a referral bonus from LinkedIn by plugging them. They're just useful. And I've gotten, I think, my past 2 jobs through just making sure I had LinkedIn Premium. So it'll make your resume stand out among the people who don't have premium in the job application, in the application pool. And that's going to be really important if you are applying to remote jobs, which I've noticed those numbers get to the hundreds within a day. So that's something to look out for. Yeah, if you can do the free trial, try to cancel it, do $20 a month. I'm not sure how long that $20 a month lasts, probably another month. So maybe you can try canceling again, and maybe that'll help. I can't speak to that personally. So Glassdoor is one, and it's the second tier job listing site for me after applying directly to a company job listing. So, sometimes companies, I guess I'll speak to the job listings first for companies. Like, that's something that, that job listing still exists, because sometimes on LinkedIn, you'll see that maybe a job was reposted, or maybe they didn't take it down after, they were done accepting applications. So like specific company job listings, and sometimes it's through, oh gosh, there's several popular like job board services that companies would adopt. I think Workday is one of them.
Mhm.
That's something that, you'll end up having a million different like Workday logins based on whatever company you're trying to apply to. So like Salesforce does it, I think. I can't remember if the last company, Crunchyroll did it, but at least those, if it's listed on the company site, it's very likely still something that you can apply to. So if there's a company that you're trying to apply for, say Salesforce or something, like maybe if you don't see it on LinkedIn, check out their website, go to their listings. Maybe whoever is in charge of that just didn't also list it on LinkedIn or any of the other boards. And then Glassdoor is good for two different reasons. So again, another job listing site. I haven't used it as much as LinkedIn and specific company websites, but just using it as a resource for company reviews as well, and pay attention to those reviews. Oftentimes people will rate either 1-star or 5-star. So, you just got to keep in mind, if you can sort company ratings by date, just so you can get a better idea of how the company's been doing recently, that'll be something that you'll want to look out for. And sometimes if a company's too small, they might not have a huge presence on Glassdoor, like they might not have as many reviews, but it's always good to check, and you can double check to see how legitimate they are in case they are a scam listing. And then Indeed, again, this is another one this is probably the one I've used the least recently. I think that, there's a lot of, I don't want to speak negatively, but I feel like Indeed might have more of those negative job listings, more of those milling, resume millings, maybe more scams, but, some companies might end up paying for that as well. So if you're looking for jobs, like absolutely poke through each one of those just to see what's out there, because sometimes they might not post to LinkedIn. Maybe they only own a Glassdoor account or Indeed account. So I think ZipRecruiter was one that I had applied for a startup that I worked for, and I hadn't seen another listing specifically for ZipRecruiter since then. Jasmine, did you want to speak to the last two?
Sure, thank you. Before we move on, any final thoughts on those that we've discussed? I know that was a lot of good content.
So just a quick addition. I agree with almost everything you've said. The boards you've listed, with the exception of LinkedIn, are aggregators. And that means that they will pick up listings from everywhere and propagate to everywhere. And they make money just the same as Google does. They basically make money when you click on an ad. Job doesn't have to exist. The job very seldom does exist after a couple days. So go to the employer site, and that is the acid test. I don't know whether employers actually pay attention to the site from which you posted. I'm sure that many of them just put the LinkedIn link on their careers page. But if you can apply directly to something got posted uniquely on the employer's site, you might get noticed and credited for having done a little bit more homework than many.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Let me see if I can figure out how to ask this. The difference between applying directly to a company job site, a company's website for the job listing, or dealing with a recruiter, because oftentimes I will get a call from a recruiter for a job that has already come to my mailbox because I apply to all the different job listings. Is it generally better to have a recruiter represent you than to go directly, or is this a dumb question?
Definitely not a dumb question.
Okay.
I will defer to Andrew.
Oh gosh. Okay, so I have an opinion. Recruiters are not going to help you unless they have an exclusive on that arrangement. Very simple reason. Recruiters add to your cost. So let's say you want to make $150,000. You're going to cost that company $175,000 if the recruiter is bargain basement and charges only a 20% fee.
Mm.
Do you want to cost the company $175, 175K, or do you want to cost them 150? If you think you can make the case for your candidacy yourself, ditch the recruiter and go direct. And I say that knowing that many people will think, oh, that Andrew is trying to put himself out of business. I don't post jobs that are shared with lots of other agencies. I've been given lots of opportunities to participate in free-for-alls with other agencies where it's just a matter of how fast you can call the candidate and secure what they call a right to represent. I think that's a mill, and it's not worth anybody's time. And I can't convince somebody who doesn't already know me that I'm worth trusting. Plus, you all also ought to know that everybody who calls you and secures a right to represent is not committing to representing you. They're committing to taking you off the market for others. So
Never thought about that.
unless you really, really, really trust them, ditch them.
Okay, great words of advice. Yeah, I actually got involved with a recruiter, somebody that I never ever would have dealt with, and he got me a really good job. It was like accidentally. So, but generally I don't, I hate to say that, Andrew, I don't trust the ones that cold call me, especially, but this guy cold called me, and it's just, yeah. So I think it was a mistake, but I'm still in that job after 2 years.
I salute your luck.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and thanks for
Great.
taking that, Andrew. All right.
Okay. So we've talked about the more general ones, and this is where if anyone has recommendations as well, I'd love to capture those. So if you're in the editorial game, the EFA is a great resource both for setting rates and understanding kind of market value in certain areas, and also the job archive, which, apologies, I am not a member at the moment and cannot access it, but I just wanted to call it out as an option for members seeking work, and some of those resources there. I've used the EFA as a reference point in pay setting negotiations with clients. It's a good resource to kind of level set at times and provide to them in case they're wondering why you cost money when all you do is mess with words and commas. So it's a good it's a good place to send them if they're starting to get a little unsure of things. Additionally, as we are all members of STC has a job bank, and I hadn't been on it recently, but it looks like they've teamed up with, and maybe this isn't new, but Writing Assistance Inc. And it looks like it's a lot more robust than last time I was looking. I was curious if anyone has used this recently or looked into this resource much, because I have not, but looks like there is some stuff on there. And yeah, again, Andrew can probably speak maybe to behavior around this, but it could be an aggregator, but at least it is a resource that we could look at. And STC also has its pay scale and job stats that it sends out every year as well. So members have access to those too. So those are resources that you can take a look at to understand the market in your area, going rate for a lot of folks who are employed, what the industry is looking like, those sorts of stats.
Yeah, I can't comment on Writing Assistance as to whether they own exclusive rights to their opportunities. If they do, they are definitely promising. If they are an also ran and just saying, I can find you tech writers because we have a large database of tech writer resumes or other kinds of writers, then you can expect pressure from them to bid low. And that's not good for the profession. So I I salute somebody who actually knows the craft and can convince hiring teams to give them exclusive rights to source candidates, at least for a short while. That's great.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that.
Um,
So,
got
oh.
some tips at the bottom. Do you want to hit those?
yes. Well, first I wanted to open it up. Does anyone have any other resources they use or places they look specifically for job boards? Could be industry specific as well, anything of that nature?
I have something that a couple of years ago when I took time off from work and I was planning on leisurely looking for a job, I came across something called virtual vocations. Are you guys familiar? That was before the pandemic and before people were really working remotely. And I still get email from them like every week because I did it's a free sign up. It's probably an aggregate like you were talking about, Andrew, and I am specifically a medical writer, but they have all kinds of writing jobs and whatnot. Has anyone heard of virtual vocations?
I have not.
I have not either.
Doesn't mean they're not real.
I like the
I'll get
name.
it.
I think it's a catchy name.
Yes,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
serve
there it is.
primarily.
Virtual vocations. Yeah.
I serve primarily the software development industry and the startup niche within that, or sub niche. And there are a couple startup only job boards that they're easier to recruit for because they actually get specific about what they need and have very high expectations that most tech writers don't even want to try to meet. And ironically, that makes my job easier. It's I could name a few, but it's there are subsectors. If you like the startup world, and once the job market gets a little healthier and better funded, I definitely recommend going to venture capitalists sites where it's a reputable venture capitalist firm and they probably got 200 portfolio companies. Look for the title of the job you want to fill and apply through them, and you will have many people cheering you on, mostly people with lots of money, namely the venture capitalists who want to see those jobs filled. It's less adversarial and less of a free-for-all.
But I thought venture capitalists didn't like technical writers.
They don't like technical writers, but they like keeping their development teams happy. And when they make development teams do doc, they're not happy.
But could you lay that out again? So one goes to venture capital websites.
Yeah,
And
you go to the master website of a venture capital firm, and you can fill in any number of venture capital firms, but you look at their portfolio page, and there will be a jobs or careers page related to that, and it will be a set. It'll be a restricted search community, and you can essentially look for the titles of opportunities in their portfolio companies that they want to fill.
I guess I wasn't familiar with that. It's like, so the venture capital firm itself will have a page related to jobs at their portfolio firms.
Precisely.
And
it's sometimes a very effective way to set yourself apart. And you can bet that the venture capitalist company is watching applications and saying, all right, who's applying and why aren't you talking to this person? Because they came to our site looking for a job like this and they look qualified to us. Talk to them. And the venture capitalist may know nothing, but the venture capitalist is more likely to apply pressure on the portfolio company, which is where they get their money, to say, hey, talk to these people. They're not wasting your time. They're showing some initiative.
I've gone to, there's a site called Link SV that I've gone to upon occasion.
Good.
does stuff about companies, small companies. It keeps track of small companies that are getting funded, and it keeps track of when they've just gotten funded and things like that. And then you can go and check out what jobs those companies have available and so forth.
Link SV is useful for many reasons. In addition to what you've already said, it lets you do a search by radius from where you are, and it lets you subdivide in 14 different boxes, so that if the company is still viable, you have to remember to select the active checkbox, because there are an awful lot of linked SV startups that are no longer active. But I'm a big Link SV fan, and very often you can rest assured that you will be the only applicant or one of a handful to posts that they make. Maybe they're not actually looking for a technical writer, but if you introduce yourself as such and say, this is what I can help you do, they'll notice. Sometimes they don't have a recruiting budget. Sometimes they haven't acknowledged the need yet. But if you're on their radar when they do look, they'll pay attention.
Any other sites of that kind of nature that you would recommend, or anything to look out for there?
Oh, well, they've changed the name, but angel.co, which is all about startups, angel funded startups. So not venture capitalists, but angels. And angels are basically venture capitalists who are already wealthy and are picking their investments more carefully. They're not trying to say, oh, we'll get a home run if we pick one winner out of 10. Angels are more selective. Anyway, angel.co has changed its name. I'm not remembering what they changed its name to, but they have a very nice job board for communicators. Well, they don't have the title technical writer, but they do have content related opportunities. And sometimes you'll find a tech writer on there. If you are a UX writer or something similar, you will find target rich territory.
That's a very good point Andrew just made, because sometimes, and I think Nikki mentioned at the very beginning, there's different names for what we do depending on what the specific flavor of technical writing you want to do. So maybe it's content designer. That's another word for UX writer. That's another, sometimes people only call it a technical writer. So like I've in the past done a search for just writer to see what will come up. And like sometimes it's surprising to see exactly like, oh, that's actually technical writer, but they're calling it like a developer advocate, something like that. So, just keep in mind, just because there's not a job title called technical writer, and that's what you want to do, you just start getting creative with like whatever synonyms that the industry tells you, like, yeah, this is actually what you're called, even though at the end of the day, we're all technical writers. So yeah.
I think the most beautiful example I've ever heard of that was the, sorry to mention this among STC people, but the Write the Docs conference, the very first one in 2013, the founder got up on stage and said, "You are all documentarians. Welcome." So if you feel like being creative, you are a documentarian too.
I love that. Add it to the list. Let's do this.
Go update our LinkedIns. Okay, great. Well, to wrap out this section and just to recap some of the tips that we talked about and call out, peripherally, we've talked about it. There are a lot of people job hopping, job applying. Get your job apps in quick. Try to apply early to new listings so you appear faster in the list. I know from job searches that or hiring committees I've been a part of, those first few that come in definitely set the tone for the pool, and you get to establish yourself quickly. Also, tailor your materials. We talked a lot about that. Don't just throw apps in without a lot of thought. It's very clear to those who are evaluating them when you haven't really read the ad closely. And as we discussed, write a cover letter, even if it's not required. But again, use your judgment. If it's not a thoughtful ad, then perhaps maybe it's not your time. And then this one has saved me a few times. Save the job ad copy so that when they take the ad down, you still have it to refer to. That one got me once. Thankfully, I have a semi-photographic memory, but it was a little bit sweaty of an interview at that moment. So to round this out, quality over quantity, we're all really good writers. Use those skills. Don't forget what you know when you are applying for jobs, because as Ace mentioned, these are your first work samples and the first things that your skills will be evaluated off of. So, any final thoughts before we, I don't know, either wrap up or hop onto one quicker topic?
I have a question because I'm chiming in from my phone. I can't see your all the entries on your screen share there. Do you talk about portfolios?
Ooh, we did not have portfolios called out, but happy to discuss.
Yeah, so this is, and it's kind of a, it's kind of a touchy subject because a lot of times we might sign NDAs or there's a company policy that says you may not use work samples from this company. And like for for legal purposes, I would say follow your company's policies. But, if you're able to do like some de-identifying of what the material is you're working on, that might be something you can do to like preserve something like information architecture sample, or maybe you want to make kind of a dummy copy of some sort of, document that you've written that you can speak to. That's something that, it's going to depend on your company, your policy. But at the end of the day, when you do have your writing portfolio samples, put it behind a password protected, say like Google Drive. Is everybody aware that you can add a Google Drive file, or you can have a Google Drive folder that you can make password protected? Just keep it private. Because again, even if you've got those de-identified samples, like you don't want that to be public knowledge. So, be very careful when you're, collecting work samples. Make sure you're not spreading, confidential information. Or you can rewrite some of your samples just a little bit so that it's not using like real information or data or whatever references that are specific to the company that you work with. But yeah, it's very important to have just samples of work that you've done, just to say that, I work there, I know the process. There's a section here called articulating your writing process, and that's something that if you can't have your work samples for very specific confidential reasons, at least you can speak to how you write them. And I find that those conversations are really relevant to either peer interviews, so like people that are gonna be in your coworkers that are also a technical writer, or say like a hiring manager that is also still in the space that they're a technical writing manager. They understand how to talk about the writing process. But yeah, I would say keep your portfolios password protected if possible.
Okay.
I missed a little bit of the presentation earlier. I had to walk away. Did you cover personal branding much?
We have a section on that, and we haven't yet. So I feel embarrassed as the VP of programming asking this. When do we normally end the presentation session? Is
Well,
it 8:30?
we don't have a fixed time. We tend to go about an hour and 10 minutes.
Okay.
Which
Okay. How about we tackle one more section? Is that acceptable?
no problem.
Okay.
So just before we leave portfolios, may I recommend that
Please.
you put some fragment of your portfolio, if you're looking in the software development world, if you put some fragment of your portfolio on your own personal GitHub page, that slays a multitude of dragons right there. Not only does it prove you can write, proves you can use GitHub, And it sets you apart from a lot of people who say, well, you'll have to, you'll have to wait till I mail my hard copy samples to you, which I'm joking about, but um, it shows that you're more modern, and it starts a conversation. I have mixed feelings about passwording protecting, because we have a recruiting community with a zero attention span. If they see a request for a password, they will consider that basically a non-resource. So I recommend altering the content, neutering it, and doing very small fragments. If you got a 200-page manual, take four pages from 2 chapters and call that good. All right, end of lecture.
Thank you, Andrew.
I don't think, I don't know, Ace, you didn't really mean literally password protected, right? I mean, you can make a Google Drive and then enable individual files or folders that certain people will have access to. So when you're sending to a specific person, you can just give that person access, and then they don't have to know any passwords or anything. They just have to have the link which you send them.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's another way you can share it. Or, you just have it in your own private Google Drive and just send them a single file at a time as they ask for it. So I guess at the end of the day, like making sure it's not publicly available, that would be the number one thing I say. And I really like Andrew's mention about GitHub, because there's a lot of, we're looking at a lot more like docs as code approach for documentation. So again, another buzzword, add it to the resume if that's something that, you want to learn about. I'm sure there's resources out there that will help you. You can set up your own GitHub, maybe play around with, repositories with documentation. So just something that I would add that to the diversify your skill set section if we had time to talk about it.
Post your resume in Markdown. Yes, indeed. All right. Branding,
Excellent.
go ahead.
Yes, thank you, though. Wonderful. All of this is going into the notes, and I'll consolidate and send out after. So, personal branding, there is a lot to talk about here. There's the literal branding of your websites and materials, but I'm specifically interested lately, especially in working with some more junior writers recently, in how you're branding your skill set and how you're representing yourself to hiring committees and those that you talk to. In this group, we emphasize elevator pitches. That's a great place to start, and that's how I am approaching this little section here. So one of the most compelling things that we have in our skill sets is our history and experience. And I think it is often overlooked in the technical writing world that you have a lot of ancillary and transferable skills that often are overlooked. And I've heard a lot of writers on the team that I work with right now, when we're discussing their skills and how they come at technical writing, really dismiss a lot of their past history. For example, one of our writers is an analyst in a past life, and that's a very specific skill set that brings a lot to technical writing. And when we were talking, they didn't really emphasize that, and I wanted to learn more personally. So we had a great discussion about that. So when I think about personal branding, I think about kind of a flow through my past experience. So for example, if we were to do this exercise, I would ask you to, and if you're willing, great, I'll give us a little time to think. If not, you can just kind of hang out. But I start with your past experience. So what are 3 things that make you unique as a technical writer? What are some experiences you've had, training, anything of that nature? Could be related to the field, could be completely disjunct, could be a hobby. So I'll give us 30 seconds to quickly think through that. So 3 things that make you unique. And go ahead and jot those down if you are wanting to participate. Give us about 10, 15 more seconds. Okay. And then an area that we're probably more comfortable and familiar with are our strengths. So these are the areas in job interviews that you're constantly being asked about, that you're emphasizing, that you're embedding in your application materials. You know yourself, you know what you're good at. So if you were to, in your elevator pitch, emphasize 3 aspects of your skill set that you think are your strongest specialties or wheelhouse areas, what would those be? Again, 30 seconds. Go ahead and jot those down. Okay, couple seconds more to wrap up. Okay, great. And then finally, to start situating these skills and experiences in the areas that we'll be working in, think about a couple content areas. What are you interested in and why do those areas matter? These can be thematic based, these can be industries. Basically, if you were to land somewhere, where would it be and why? Go ahead and take about 30 seconds. Okay, go ahead and wrap that up. Okay. And then using those 3 areas that you have thought about, we're going to turn those into an elevator pitch using, let me move out of presentation mode real quick. Oh no, Prezi is very excited. Okay. We're going to transform that into an elevator pitch using a basic template. And forgive me, Prezi is not my wheelhouse of the moment. There we go. So using those, and you can loosely apply these, forgive the curly bracket. I am a technical writer or technical communicator with a background in the 3 past experiences that you've mentioned. I've used these skills to do something. What are your strengths? How they inform your work? And then using the industry you thought about, bring those together and explain how those are going to contribute to what you will bring to this company or industry that you're targeting. Again, this is a very loose elevator pitch format. Please feel free to modify as you like, but emphasizing those core areas of yourself. Let's come up with a quick little blurb that gets a little bit deeper into your branding than we normally go with just focusing on our strengths and what we want to accomplish.
So it's an interesting thing that you're doing here, and what I would suggest, I guess, is if you put this thing together, put it on your LinkedIn page as your introductory thing.
Mhm.
Or about
Yeah, absolutely. These are great blurbs at the top that kind of break you out of that more mundane, I'm so and so and I do this. And it starts to get at those talking points that in interviews and discussions really make you memorable and really give you things that you're passionate to talk about. So I'll give us a couple moments more, about 15 seconds, and then let's share some if people are willing. right, just a couple more moments. All right. Is anyone brave enough to give it a shot and walk us through the items they identified and then how they put those together into a cohesive statement? I can guinea pig if people are shy, but if anyone's really ready to go, let me know.
Can volunteer as tribute.
Excellent.
Okay, so past experience. Do you want me to just walk through all the bullet points,
Yeah,
or do you just want my
please.
blurb?
No, I'd like
So-
to see the evolution.
Yeah, so what makes me unique? So I've done web development, marketing, and graphic design in the past. My specialties are technical writing, UX writing, and creative writing. And the industry I'm interested, at least the content areas I'm interested in, is software and user-centered design. So I put that all together into I'm a technical writer with a background in web development, marketing, and graphic design. I use these skills to apply to my technical UX and creative writing projects. In the software industries, I bring these skills to accomplish user-centered writing projects.
I like that. So where would you see, I'm just completely putting you on the spot, apologies, but where could you see yourself using that sort of approach? Like, do you find it useful? Does it make you think in a different way at all?
Yeah, because like I end up breaking down my skill sets into these, like, again, you see my resume, it's just like these are just my skills. So like instead of bringing it all together into like one, well, I guess I don't bring those together into one blurb. Like they're all like very separate. They're all like, these are technical skills, these are writing skills. So like this would just be a great, again, like I feel called out. My LinkedIn intro is I am a technical writer at Crunchyroll. That doesn't really say much about me other than like what my job title is and where I work. So, taking this sort of approach would make my profile stand out more. And, however the algorithm works, you'll end up maybe being searched by these things that you're, that you're passionate about or that, you have skills in. So. Yeah, I really like this.
Thanks. And yeah, I agree. And this kind of, at its base, it goes back to values and how you present yourself. And when I think about personal branding, I do think about values and what makes me who I am as a technical communicator. And I really try to bring a lot of the way I interact with hiring committees and interviewers, bring them back to those values in myself so that I am touching back upon not only my strengths, but who I am as a writer. And it sounds a little deep and a little heavy, but it really helps me frame how I present myself, which is why I use this exercise in the context of personal branding, because it is how you're representing yourself and how you're conceptualizing what you bring to this position. And it gives you a really good frame so that you don't end up just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall when you're answering questions. You have a very direct approach and you know exactly what you're trying to get across to the interviewers rather than just answering questions and hoping you're answering them correctly or guessing what they want to hear. So, anyone else brave enough to share?
I can step up. I'm kind of not of the same set. I was a tech writer.
No, please.
And now I'm a recruiter of tech writers. So what makes me unique? Longevity, or if you want to consider it, stamina, professional connections, broad technical skills, and my continuing commitment to keeping relevant. My specialties: research, developmental editing, collaboration with a whole bunch of different kinds of people, often on the spectrum, and explaining without oversimplifying. And finally, I would say candor. Many people come to me because they don't want to hear smoke and mirrors. In terms of content areas, software development, definitely. Medical devices inspire me, and sometimes genetic research. So I would wrap that all into a a mini bio by saying I'm a technical writer turned recruiter, known for broad technical awareness, professional connections, and relevance, that I can help you crystallize your message and your search for talent in a collaborative and direct fashion. And I can help you get your message across without oversimplifying it, without trivializing it. Period.
That is great.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you sharing.
Very nice.
Okay, and I will selfishly jump in as well. So I am a structuralist and narrative theorist in training, and I have a lot of teaching experience as well. Some of my strengths are collaboration, project management, and analysis, and my interest in industry lies in software, startups, and fast-paced environments. And I rolled these together into I am a technical writer with a background in structuralism, narrative theory, and teaching. I use these skills to help users navigate products from start to finish in a friendly, accessible manner. In the startup world, I collaborate and manage projects using a people-first approach to analyze and streamline documentation and workflows for efficiency.
Bravo.
Thank you. And I find that just looping these in really creates a lot of entry points for your interviewers as well. There's a lot for them to pick out and touch on, and all of those can lead to just really great conversations. Because I know when I've interviewed folks, I remember the ones who tell me things I didn't expect, and we have a really good conversation around their skills that maybe I wouldn't have known they had. So just a nice exercise to kind of get your brain going and thinking about how you want to come across. So before I close it out, does anyone want to jump back in? I don't want to cut anyone off if anyone's ready.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Someone who's speaking.
Oh, sorry. I think the only caution I would offer to people thinking about putting this on a LinkedIn profile is you don't want to look too broad to a certain kind of audience. We're dealing with people who have very narrow interests, and they don't want a flight risk. So if you say, I'm interested in a broad range of things, including X, Y, and Z, and they're only interested in a fraction of X, they might be turned off. And that's okay if you've got choices.
Right.
Absolutely.
I've always
be wary.
Right. No, I've worried about that because in my career I've worked, and to jump into my description is, I guess I sometimes think I'm one of those rare people with an engineering that started out with an engineering degree but chose to do tech writing along the way, and that as a strength gives me. I will answer this question or bring it up in interviews saying, more than understanding the technology, often I find I understand the engineers. So I'm able to tease out what they're trying to say rather than what they actually said to me in a functional doc or in describing the technology or whatever. And again, going back to my background, I've spent time both on the semiconductor, and this is the issue Andrew was raising. I'm editorializing as I go. I've spent time on the hardware, the actual semiconductor chip documentation, but I've done software documentation as well. I have always been an early adopter of new technologies, blogging before other people. I'm a great fan of wikis, which have become standard across the board. So I hope to bring, and then depending on who I'm talking to, I hope to bring that to either a software environment or a hardware environment. And long experience, understanding of actual technical thinking to create what we feel as communicators. Our first and last rule is know thy user. So focusing it on what user needs what, and the details we can talk about further in the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Well, great. Thank you all. I know this was a much more free-form session than those in the past. I really appreciate everyone's thoughts and contributions. And Ace and I will collect all of the information you brought up, what's in our slides, and we'll send that out shortly, hopefully by the end of the week, so that these resources are available. And yeah, best of luck out there if you're searching, and if those in your network are searching as well. It's rough, but we'll get through it. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess I'll stop the recording here. Let's
Thank you.